Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. We are going to be doing a special episode today. You guys have probably seen some of the deeper dive into dynasties. This time it's going to be deeper dive into DFS, and today we have on Mr. Nate Williams, and he can be found on Twitter at Nate_FFL. How's it going?
What is up, Coach? Long time in the making. I am very happy to be here. Ready to chat with you about some DFS.
Yeah, he says long time in the making because I think we postponed this about 4 or 5 times.
It almost happened today, but we made it happen.
It seems like every time we tried to do this, something came up, but happy to have you on. And of course, we are both pretty big into DFS at this point in time. We'll get started with kind of how you got into fantasy football in general, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how you got into DFS.
So as far as fantasy football, I started playing in 2012. I had one of my good buddies invited me to a play. I really knew nothing about it at the time. I was a huge football fan, diehard Lions fan, never played fantasy. So it was a standard league. I remember my first draft pick was Calvin Johnson, just because I was a Lions homer, didn't know anything about, fantasy. I don't remember how good I did, but I knew I was hooked, and I've been playing every year since in my leagues. There's just more and more and more leagues every year. So I love it.
Were you one of those people that just kept drafting Calvin Johnson like first round every year then?
Yeah, that was me for sure. Until I learned that, that's not too smart. I don't know. He was pretty good. So
I drafted Andre Johnson myself, like first round every year until it was like irrelevant, like until you couldn't. But it like when somebody's that good, at least like it's not completely a mistake,
Right. You can't be too hard on yourself. I mean, I get it. You're a Texans fan, and at least he was solid. It's good.
No, he was like up there in the first round. He's like first, second round pick every year, and I usually drafted towards the end of the round, anyways, because I always made the playoffs and everything. So my team name was actually Andre Johnson for president for the longest time too.
I believe it.
Yeah, but definitely you get some of that homer bias. We even talked about that, Smokey and I, in the deeper dive into Dynasty episode where his first year he drafted a whole bunch of Cowboys. So
I was going to say a bunch of Cowboys.
Yep. But we'll get kind of moved over. So how did you get started playing DFS? And then maybe if it was an NFL DFS first, then you can talk about what you got into DFS first and then how you got over to NFL DFS once you did.
Yeah, so about 2014, my friend Aaron got a hold of me. He's like, you got to play DraftKings. You got to play DraftKings. And, I had obviously heard of it. Advertisements are all over the place. But I was like, okay, whatever. I'll give it a shot. I'll make a lineup. But it was not NFL. It was NBA. It was basketball season. So I made some lineups. I won a couple dollars here and there. And I was like, okay, this is fun, And then one night I had, done a lot of research and kind of gambled. I put Marcus Morrison, Piston, and he blew up. And I took down a GPP. And I've been kind of hooked since because luckily I've been winning pretty steadily. I started with NBA, then I did MLB, then I did NASCAR, then I did football just because of the way how the year goes with the way the sports start. So yeah, that's pretty much how it went. I've been playing now for 7 years, multiple sports, lots of lineups, but it's fun. I love it. Even when you lose, you got to take the losses too, but winning's the best.
The end of the day, that's the goal, is to win more than lose. It's, inherently it's gambling, and pretty much with anything that's gambling related, you want to win at least 60% of the time. So
yeah, you don't want to, I like to have a good bankroll. I don't like getting into my pocket to play, so I try to keep my bankroll up, and there's certain ways to do that. But
was there ever like a time when you stopped playing at all, or you just been pretty much consistently going the whole time since 2014?
I mean, there's been like a week here and there I would take off when I was busy with, family stuff or whatever, but pretty consistently over the last 7 years, I've been there.
But never like a season off or anything like that, really?
No season off in any sport. No, I've played every sport basically. Well, the 4 sports I mentioned for the last 7 years, maybe a week off here and there.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So I don't know if we ever talked about my story, how I got into DFS. My buddy tried to get me into it a couple years back myself, but I was down in Florida. You couldn't do any DFS or anything down in Florida at that time. So when I moved up when I was in Michigan, so I started playing then, but it was when the XFLs first started. So there's like no information on any of these guys. So it's just like it's
Oh
kind of like
man.
how it is right now with the NFL preseason, where it's just kind of a crapshoot week to week.
Yeah, I never played XFL. Never.
Yeah.
I've actually don't think I've ever watched it, but
Well, I was really into XFL. I watched every game. Like I knew all this stuff, but like just trying to figure out who's going to go off week to week. And then it only ended up being about 4 or 5 weeks long, before COVID hit and everything too. So it was just kind of a mess because there was these guys that were hyped up because they were coming over from the NFL, and you play them all like the first week. You got your Sammy Coach or Christine Michael and all these guys that were big they were once big draft picks in the NFL, and then they go to the XFL. You're like, they should do something, and then they just like goose egg.
do nothing.
It's like, oh, looks, we just lost $20 on that, but
Well, I'm
yeah,
kind of
luckily,
sad XFL's gone. I could have got to try it.
yeah, well, supposedly it was going to come back this year. Now it's looking like, or not like this year, but like this coming year. But now it's looking more like the year after that, I guess. So
Oh, I didn't know
be
that.
really interesting to see what happens with all that. But
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I got into that, and then I got rolled right over to NFL after that, and then I got an NBA hard this year.
Yeah, I know you did. I was into it pretty heavy too for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I blame my buddy for that, and then it got to the point where I'm like, well, like for me, the NBA is kind of like the easiest to predict because all you got to kind of do is figure out the minutes. Like, yeah, there's going to be guys that have harder shooting nights and stuff like that.
It's so true. Every sport is so different in the way you do things. It's I'm not sure people realize just how different every sport is.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, especially because I mean, football, it's really it's based mainly on touchdowns, especially for certain positions. MLB is like a whole nother monster just because there's a lot of luck involved in MLB.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I've won some stuff on some money on MLB, but I definitely know there was a lot of luck involved.
Yeah, I came second in a pretty big contest, but it ended up being one of those, free contests on DraftKings. So I only won $10. I'm like, if this was in like a $5 lineup, I would have won like $5,000.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You'll play a couple dollars, and win, $30, and you're like, man, if I would have played more. Just putting it in multiple tournaments, even that's how I usually clean up.
Yeah, I know you do real big in that NASCAR too.
I've just been lucky enough to kind of figure it out. You know what I mean? I've been playing it for a long time because my dad plays, so it's something that me and him do together. So it's just at this point, I've kind of figured out, every track's different. So every drive, like you pick different drivers every week, but it's fun. I love playing NASCAR DFS. A lot of people aren't into it, but I think it's a ton of fun.
Then I think you played a little bit of golf this year, right?
Yeah.
Golf.
I didn't do very good. I didn't do very good in the golf. I played it last year too, and I won a couple dollars here and there, but golf's pretty hard. I'm not into it enough to know.
Yeah, well, golf is just like there's 4 days. So if you have one bad day, your guy gets cut. And then if you don't have 5 out of 6 guys make the cut, you're pretty much done for it too. So
yeah, I did learn that.
There's a lot of interesting things out there with that. But if you're into golf DFS, check out 9 to 5 Sports on YouTube. Free plug for him because he's got a lot of great information over there. Has his own models. Dude's like crazy with all that stuff. If you're into NASCAR DFS, people should check out you yourself. Are you still writing any NASCAR stuff at all or not?
No, I'm actually not. But if people have questions, they can hit me up on Twitter at NateFFL and _FFL, and we can talk for sure. But no, I'm not writing about NASCAR anymore. I am on strictly football now.
Yeah, you even helped me win some NASCAR money too.
Yeah, and D Brown. That's how I got this hat. This hat was the thank you. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah, so we'll get back over to the NFL DFS for a little bit. So when you go about building your lineups, do you have a set strategy you kind of try to follow, or when you're first getting into the week, like how do you kind of get started?
I would say I usually get started by looking at the Vegas line. To me, that's a big deal. It's most of the time fairly accurate. So I'll check out the Vegas lines, see how all that goes. As far as like a set strategy, I don't really have a set strategy, but there's a few things I tend to focus on, like late swaps. Late swaps is a big advantage when players end up not playing or playing, and you have an advantage there for people that aren't following it closely or, busy. so they miss the late, the advantage of the late swap. So, I love that. I like to think about ownership, which I try to predict, and sometimes I'm right, and a lot of times I'm not. But I do try to focus on that. Sometimes there's a lot of value out there, and I also want to say if a player's highly owned, a lot of people will be like, if they're in a GPP, they're like, I got to avoid them. No, you play your studs. That's a big thing. So I like that. And then one thing I'm big on, I don't know about you because we've never really discussed this, but my flex positions are always wide receivers because they have more upside. If I'm in a GPP, cash is different, but I play a lot of GPPs. My flex is generally a wide receiver. What about you for flex?
It kind of depends on the week too. Just depending on what's available out there too. Because and it depends where I'm spending money elsewhere too, really. I probably say like 60% of the time it's a wide receiver though. I think some of my best lines I've had like I'm in a GPP and I'm trying to get like cheap stack that's really different from somebody else. Last year on FanDuel, the week where the Cowboys played the Eagles, I went with Andy Dalton as quarterback and Michael Gallup as a wide receiver. Michael Gallup had 2 touchdowns. He was like a yard short of that 3rd touchdown. If he gets that 3rd touchdown, I would have won that contest. So, and Andy Dalton was like 4%. Like it was only the afternoon slate, but even then Andy Dalton was only like 4% owned. Michael Gallup was like 18% owned. So
there are times if there's a great value at running back, it might sneak into my flex, but I try my best to get that upside at wide receiver. But I definitely see what you're saying.
So I guess let's put it this way: like when you're first building your lineup, do you try to put in kind of some of the cheap guys, the value guys? Do you try to stick them in first? Do you try to figure out who you want to pay up for and stick them in first? We'll get into stacking a little bit later, though.
I would say my general habit probably is to look for the values first, see where I can save some money, or look for my studs, players I know I want. So, I would say definitely looking for value is pretty big. Most people know that, you need value so you can pay up at the positions that, you want to spend on the studs. So if you can find your value, then you can go nail your studs down. So that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to me. I try to find the cheap plays that I actually want to play, or, like we talked about, those high ownership plays that are, they're really chalky, but in football, it seems like you can kind of get away from them a little bit more. I know in basketball, it's like you pretty much have to play the chalk and then differentiate yourself elsewhere. In football, especially in GPPs, it's a little bit different, but I think you still have to play some of the chalk at certain times too, especially on the shorter slates. When it comes to like slates, are you into the bigger slates or the smaller slates for football at least?
That's one thing I like to study before, I won't just enter any tournament. I try to find the tournaments because some will pay out 18, 19% to, the top for the winners. Some pay out 22. So sometimes I'll look for that. Another thing I like a lot is the single entry tournaments because you're not getting, attacked by a bunch of sharks. So single entry, I feel like definitely there's an advantage there. Another thing, you didn't really mention it, but I'm going to just bring it up real quick, is at the beginning of the year, I like to play cash games because there's a lot of novice or, inexperienced players giving it a try. And I feel bad to say it, but a lot of times you can beat them. You can win that money. You can build your bankroll. So I think cash at the beginning of the year is a big advantage, especially if you're new to DFS. If you're just getting in, don't just jump into the GPPs, play some cash games, build a bankroll, get used to it. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, part of it's you got to know what you're able to spend too. So if you only got $20 to put in for, you get $20 to start, don't spend your whole $20 the first week either. Spend, $4 or $5. Enter a couple different contests, especially like if you're on DraftKings, you can enter 10-cent contest if you want to. You can enter a $1 single entry contest. If you're on FanDuel, they got 5-cent contests you can even enter.
I tend to play like a lot of like between $3 and $15 is generally where I'm at.
Yeah, and I read something too, like when I first started studying a lot of DFS too, it kind of broke down a lot of different strategies when they talked about playing cash games, building the bankroll up, trying to really find that sweet spot, your $1 single entries, your $3 single entries. Don't enter the big contest that's $4 to win $1 million because that's what's advertised on TV. because everybody enters that. They think they're going to win it, and only one
You,
person can end up winning it at the end of the day.
you exactly nailed it. Everybody wants to hit the big one. You know, they want the big money. And that tournament is got 100,000 people in it, and it pays out like 15% of the people at the top. So odds are you're probably not going to even make your money back. But that's definitely where everybody goes to, is that $4 entry with the big money to win, because that's the dream. Everybody wants to be rich.
Yeah, I'll say one thing too. On DraftKings, they have pretty much a free contest every week for the Monday Night Football. So if you just want to get your feet wet, play those cheap contests, play that free contest. The free contest, yes, there's going to be 100,000 people in it, and probably only 1,500 get paid out. But if you hit that a couple times during the year, it's still like $1 that week, $1 this week, $2 this week, $3 this week. Hey, you get lucky and you win the whole thing. You get like $100 or something. It's still money.
That's a good point. Because they have the sponsor, like sometimes be like, KFC free contest or whatever. They have that in NASCAR too. That's a great point though.
So literally every time there is one for DraftKings, and there's a lot for football, every one of those I will enter. And I don't want to brag too much, because I play like a lot of single game DFS for NFL last year. So those KFC ones, there's probably 18 in the year on total. I probably cashed 13 of them.
Nice.
So
that's pretty good, because they don't pay out.
No, it's only the top 2%, really. Some of those ones too, if you want to build that lineup that's a little bit crazy, throw it in the free one, because it's not costing you anything, and it's going to be different than the other ones. So if you want to play that lineup where you got two defenses, their defense is a captain, that's the one to throw it into, because there's not going to be as many people out there playing that. And then if it hits it, you're pretty much guaranteed to get it towards the top right away. So
that makes total sense, man. You'll have the the wild entry, but it's going to have contrarian plays where everybody else doesn't have them. That's good advice.
Yeah, I didn't do that one a lot, but there was the game with Carolina and Atlanta, and it was raining and super windy, and I'm just well, I'll play both defenses, and I just threw in the free one like that. I think that's one of the ones that didn't cash, but it's that's the one where you kind of want to try it. But just go in there, dig deep, find some contests you like, especially, when you're first starting out. If you only got $20, figure out whatever your limit's going to be that you're going to spend on a weekly basis. I know for a lot of cash games, I don't know what your strategy is with cash games, but, most people try to play a double up. You try to play a 50-50, but the more people you got in it, the better chance you got of paying out too.
Yeah. I kind of like the three-man leagues. I don't know if you ever played those. Those are pretty good. I play a lot of they're cash, but they pay, say there's 35 people, it pays out the top fives $25. You know what I mean? I like those. For some reason, I'm just got a hot hand on those right now, so I've been playing a ton of those. So those are cool. I don't really do a lot of head-to-heads. I have before, but
head-to-head now is probably harder than it's ever been, because you got a lot of sharks. You got a lot of sharks that are trying to go after little people too. But I think both of the major sites, I think they made some where the sharks can't play for under $5 or something head-to-head.
After you win so much, they put a thing on you where you can only play certain things.
Yeah. And then if you're playing on FanDuel, they have certain contests that, it's experienced players excluded or something like that. So if you just go in there, dig around a little bit, enter a couple of those, you can get $1 single entry $1, and you're playing against, other people that probably don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. if you're new to DFS too, you can get in those beginner tournaments, which is great. If you haven't played 25 entries yet, they have beginner leagues. Those are great, because you're not, like you said, you're not going to get devoured by the sharks, because they're out there. And that's another thing about the single entry tournaments. If you're playing a multi-entry tournament where you can enter 20 times, sharks are going to do it. They're going to have 20 entries, so their odds of winning are pretty good. So,
or ones where it's 150 max. Well, there's people out there. They're just going in Fantasy Cruncher. They're going in whatever optimizer they use. They're hitting a button. They're dragging the CSV file over, and they got 150 lineups, and it took them 2 minutes to do it.
They literally do. I know of a lot of people that do that. That's not fun though, man. To me, like,
I
sure
mean,
it's fun. Sure, it's fun to win money, but I don't know.
yeah.
It's not
I
my style.
mean, you have to be committed to do that too. I tried it a little bit with NBA DFS myself, but it's just like it ruins part of the fun with it too. And it's just for me, like I like looking. You can get projections pretty much anywhere. If you're playing in DFS, you're not comfortable doing your own projections. Find somebody you trust to do projections. And this is something like I first did, like when I first started doing DFS, especially with NBA too. Like I figured out, like I had a benchmark. Like I want to hit this many points with my lineup, and then I tried to build out my lineup to hit that many points. Don't do that quite as much now, but I think starting off, it's not a terrible idea. So, say typically I'm just going to use MLB for an example, just because I've been playing more MLB lately. Well, on most days, if you hit like 140 points in MLB, you're going to cash. So you want to build it. So say you build your lineup to hit 150 points. So then you just try to figure out your positions and then just kind of move it around here and there until you get to that spot where you think you're at. That obviously there's going to be a little bit of variance with any player, especially with NFL, because hey, Joe Schmo, that dart throw darling, Jalen Guyton, scores a 70-yard touchdown this week, and then he puts you over the top. But then next week, you're like, oh, he's going to get me that 8 or 9 points that I want, and he has one reception for 4 yards. That's going to happen in NFL more than any other sport. MLB has a little bit of that too, because guys will go over 4 one day and then hit 3 home runs the next day too. So, but
recency bias can really hurt you.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like I like to go for that guy that nobody else is playing, that it's kind of way down there. Because and a lot of times, all you need is like that touchdown out of them to pay off. I guess we'll kind of segue over to for like tight ends. Like, what do you typically like to do with tight ends in your lineups?
Generally, I would say I pay down. I go for the cheaper guys. But it's really nice to have Kelsey in your lineup, but you're paying top dollar, you know. Yeah. So I would say with tight ends, my habit's probably to scroll down and find somebody cheaper. Try to find somebody that I think, you know, has a good matchup against a bad defense that's gonna, you know, hopefully he'll get, like you said, touchdowns are king. So yeah, I generally probably go down. I might, some weeks I might play Kelsey or Kittle, you know, or the top guys, but most of the time I'm paying down.
Yeah.
What about you?
I will try to pay down as much as possible, pretty much every given week. The series I did last year is pretty much all what I called value plays on DraftKings. So it was like quarterbacks under a certain price range, running backs under a certain price range, wide receivers under 5K, tight ends under a certain price range, defenses that were cheap that could potentially do something. We'll talk a little bit about defenses in a second here, but tight end, I generally want to pay down, especially because like you look at how much more expensive Kelsey is than everybody else. It's like, well, if he has an off week, you're just screwed. And then the difference in that money could it be made up elsewhere too? It's kind of like the same debate in fantasy though, but fantasy is a little bit different too, because you just have Travis Kelsey every week. You're not giving up that extra money that you could be using somewhere else.
Exactly.
Then I guess kind of quarterback and defense are kind of the same way too. Do you typically pay up or down for those two positions?
That I would say depends on the week. I kind of noticed something last year, and I want to see how it goes this year. But it seemed to me, statistically last year, quarterbacks and running backs were beating their projected score versus 4-3 defenses, or 3-4, excuse me. And then the running backs were beating their projections against 4-3. I don't know if it was an anomaly or a fluke, but at the end of last year, I started to notice that. So that kind of depends. A lot of times there's value at running back. I think you can get like a guy that's down a little bit further, like a Gaskin or something that's going to score, you know, maybe a couple touchdowns that week, and that'll be great for you. He'll probably be low owned. So, but I probably would have a stud wide receiver, one stud running back, and then at quarterback, man, probably pay down, probably go for a cheaper guy at quarterback generally most of the time.
Yeah, I typically pay down unless it's like one of those shorter slate, that afternoon slate where you got 4 or 6 games or something like that. Sometimes I'll pay up on one of those. And then I'll try to like heavy stack. One of the contests I did pretty well in last year was when Kansas City played Tampa Bay the first time. And Mahomes had like crazy first half. Tyreek Hill had the crazy first half. I had those 2 stacked. And then like somebody else in that game, I got like top 10 in that contest or whatever. But and honestly, that lineup was just kind of a joke because my buddy didn't want to play the lineup. I'm like, here's the, and this is pretty much how I got. I didn't really play DraftKings much until like this point because he played on DraftKings. He's the guy that tried to get me in DFS forever, like a long time ago. And I pretty much just played on DraftKings because I think it's more challenging on DraftKings. I think it's more rewarding. I think FanDuel's a little bit easier. So if you're newer, maybe FanDuel's for you, but it's also easier for everybody else too.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I started out on FanDuel and moved to DraftKings a couple of years ago.
He wanted to play whatever lineup. I'm like, just play this one. It'll be like, because at the time, Tampa Bay, the way you beat their defense was over the top. So all you had to do is throw the ball deep to Tyreek Hill. Jamel Dean was also out. People will say Carlton Davis is their best corner. Jamel Dean's the best corner. I don't care what anybody says. We saw that. Like, okay, you can say the pass rush in the Super Bowl, but Jamel Dean was on Tyreek Hill most of that game too. And what happened?
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. And then you could put Winfield on Kelsey, and like it made a difference. Like,
it's true. That was a wild game though.
Yeah, but and that's like a lot of stuff with DFS too. You got to pay attention to injuries, like kind of like you said already with the late swap.
If you're playing the main slate and it's 20 minutes to kickoff, you're gonna want to be checking. Otherwise, you're gonna find yourself out of luck.
But the best thing for NFL, it's not like NBA DFS. You'll get Paul George is out 2 seconds before the game starts.
NBA is brutal for that.
For the NFL, you can literally go on RotoWire. It tells you the inactive guys for the game about an hour to an hour and a half before the game time. You have a couple other guys that go through warm-ups and get hurt like that too, but that's usually, that'd be 20 to 30 minutes before the game. So if you just follow some sources, there's some pretty good ones out there to get all your updates from. Free plug to Awesemo. Their news updates are like top of the notch. El Negro Loco, I think is his name over there, that does all their stuff. He's like insane on top of everything all the time. I follow them just for NBA DFS just because of that. Like, that's because it's like bam, 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 bam.
Exactly what I do. I follow him too because he is on those injuries and stuff, man. It's great. Awesemo is pretty great. I love Awesemo. Fantasy Labs too is a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of good resources out there. I'll probably say, like if you're first getting into DFS, kind of test things out, see what works for you, see what doesn't. You don't have to go to some big site and pay right away and get into everything either. Like I said, you can find free projections from different sources, figure out what works for you. And, if you're already playing regular fantasy football, you're setting lineups every week, you kind of know who has decent matchups too. Like that Michael Gallup week, though, I keep going back to that just because, like, no matchups. Like the Philadelphia Eagles second corner, it's like, okay, well, they got undrafted rookie Michael Jacquet out there. That's going to be a good matchup 9 times out of 10.
That's solid, man. And that's what you want to do. You want to look at the matchups. You want to look at which players are lining up with who, and you did it perfectly because that's how you win.
And let me just smush one bug here. There's all these people out there telling you to play Sammy Watkins week 1 because Sammy Watkins is awesome week 1. Sammy Watkins had not scored a touchdown in week 1 until 2 years ago. So 5 seasons in a row, he averaged 8 fantasy points a game in PPR leagues. Until 2 years ago, he had a 3 touchdown game. Then last year, he had a 1 touchdown game. If he doesn't get that touchdown, he's not even worth playing last year. Yeah, he's probably going to be cheap. He's on the Ravens. That's a run-first team against an Oakland Raiders team that cannot stop the run. How do you think he's going to have this monster game that everybody's talking about him? So he's probably going to be 40% owned, 50% owned. And he goes against Casey Hayward, who he has a terrible history against when they were on the Chiefs and the Chargers. Just avoid that week 1. Like, that's all I got to say.
I have heard those rumors. Yeah, I'm like you. I'm not buying in. I'm not interested at all, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be even worse now if Rashad Bateman doesn't start week 1. But
That's
I'm just
probably where a
gonna,
lot of it's getting fueled too.
yeah, but people don't overbuy into narratives in DFS. That's one of the worst habits people can get in. Oh, this guy's gonna have a good basketball is even more popular too. This guy's gonna have a 40-point game because it's his birthday. Just because it's his birthday doesn't mean he's gonna play any better.
That's also NASCAR. If it's their home track, they're going to win the race. And sometimes it happens. Most of the time, it does not.
Yeah, or a lot of times you'll see the revenge games too. Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick should have a revenge game every freaking week then.
Yeah, he's got 14 of them.
Yeah. Historically, there are some guys that, there's some guys that do better than that. Deshaun Jackson's one of them. Yeah, you can buy into it. Like if that's the difference maker between playing Deshaun Jackson and Tutu Atwell or whoever, then go ahead and do it. Like that's my point with that.
Yeah, sometimes there's success there, but I mean, do I buy into it personally? Not really, because the ownership's going to be ridiculous, and I can avoid that.
We kind of talked about the tips new for people that are kind of new to DFS, unless you have any more.
I would just say that, there's tools out there. Like you said, you don't have to pay right away. It's great if you do want to pay and support those sites. That's great. It's great to see them supported, but there's free tools out there. There's tools available. I mean, at True North, we're going to have DFS articles posted on one of the pages. Ball Blast posts. We'll have Bo McBriar over there is going to have DFS stuff posted. So there's free stuff with good analysts. So just follow them, pay attention to them, read their stuff, listen to their pods, show them some support, and it'll pay off for you.
Yep. Speaking of pods, who's got a new DFS pod coming out?
We are in the kitchen cooking, and we are ready, man. We're almost ready. No, me, Dan Brown, and brother Matt are working very hard because our SODFS podcast will be launching September 2nd on Thursday night. Not exactly sure of the time yet, but it will be Thursday. Man, am I excited. We have been just relentlessly working on it lately. I'm grateful to Dan and Matt have been busting their ass, and it is great. I'm stoked, man. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So that'll be on the True North Fantasy Football YouTube link. Are you guys going to put it out anywhere else as well? Like in whatchamacallit?
On like a podcast and stuff. Yeah, we're working on that too. We still got 3 weeks, so we're still, sketching out the details, making sure our, T's are crossed and stuff. So we're working on that, but we will have it available elsewhere. We will have the live stream on the True North Network, and it will be on the YouTube page also to start with for sure. So if you want to head to the True North page, that's where it will 100% be, and follow us, listen to the pods, and we'll have some announcements on other outlets.
Yep. And then I know you talked about Ball Blast. You're writing some DFS over there as well too, right?
Yeah, I'll be writing a little bit of stuff. Bo's handling most of it, but I'll be throwing in some stuff here and there.
Yeah, Bo is a very awesome individual. If you haven't met him yet,
yeah,
I don't know exactly what his Twitter handle is now. I think it's changed a couple different times. I did write on the site last year with him as well. So definitely a very good guy. If you like hot sauce, Hotbox is the hot sauce for you as well. Free plug there.
But, yeah, I have tried it. It is amazing.
Yeah, I still got to get it, but that's a whole nother story. And then last but not least, I guess, we kind of skipped over this one, but how much do you value like stacking in NFL DFS at least?
For GPPs, I'm definitely stacking. I don't know about you, but generally there's a correlation with quarterbacks and wide receivers. If the quarterback's throwing touchdowns, somebody's catching them. So if you pick the right wide receiver or tight end, I mean, you're maximizing, your potential there. So in GPPs, I think stacks are great, but a lot of times my stacks will not be, the one that everybody's playing. I'll try to find a different one with, just maybe Jalen Hurts and Devontae, Smith. So yeah, I love stacking in GPPs. What do you do?
I think you mean Jalen Hurts and Greg Ward.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, no. I like to stack, but kind of like you, I like to do different stacks. I like to do value stacks typically,
Exactly.
unless it's like the one with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill where they have that great matchup. But a lot of times people are going to be out there stacking guys like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs together.
That's a big one.
But say, hey, Stephon Diggs is going against, they're playing the Patriots. He's going against Stephon Gilmore. So what if you just stack Gabriel Davis and Gabriel Davis gets the touchdown? Then you already have a differentiating point in your lineup. And if Gabriel Davis scores the same points as Stephon Diggs, that might be the difference for you because you got to pay up somewhere else as well.
And that's how you place higher in the GPPs. Mm-hmm. Definitely an advantage.
Mm-hmm. And even don't overrate some of these mid-range guys too. I won so much freaking money off Tim Patrick last year.
Like, he was solid though. He was consistently decent.
If you go back to my videos last year, value plays Tim Patrick. He was always in there because his price never went up. Like he was like $4,800 like for like 10 weeks straight. And the dude he scored a touchdown every other game. So one week he wouldn't help you, but the next week he's winning you money easy. So
I did. I used him a lot. And then even in my home league, which isn't obviously DFS, it's just fantasy football, but I got ravaged by injuries last year. I had CMC, I had Dak. I can't even remember. But my team just got ravaged and I had Tim Patrick and I had to play him a lot. And luckily he was pretty decent.
It's like anything. You go in your fantasy football draft, your redraft. DFS is the same way. People like to play the names they know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to play the guy that is a Tim Patrick that not everybody knows.
No, yeah, that's great advice.
My last point probably is just pay attention to prices, pay attention to guys that shift, guys that don't shift. I think it's even more on DraftKings kind of overcorrects more than FanDuel does sometime though. I don't know if you remember last year, there was a week where like Mike Davis, he was the starting running back and they forgot to like up his price by like $2,000.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah. Then everybody was playing him. But it's like at that point, if everybody's playing him, it's just a free square. Like if he sucks, and everybody has him and he sucks. If he's good, then everybody has him and he's good. Like it's not worth risking it at that point, especially if somebody's that cheap.
I do remember that now that you bring it up. I had forgot, but DraftKings will make mistakes sometimes. NBA this year, there was one of the Atlanta Hawks was like 10.
Oh, Kevin Herter was
Kevin Herter, yeah. I looked at
it. He's $9,500 instead of $5,900. That's what it was.
I got some good laughs out of that.
Yeah. But that night it's almost like you. What if you just play him just in because
nobody else I thought about that. I'm like, no one's gonna play him. I should put him in, but no. I
think his ownership was like 0.4% that night.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I mean, take advantage of it. They make mistakes. Yeah. They're humans behind the scenes.
Like what if he actually scores 50 points tonight?
Yeah, and 1% ownership. I considered it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then I chickened out. But I think there's going to be guys like that too. Pay attention to the rookies early on in the season. Some of these guys' prices might not be as much as they should be right away. Maybe a Najee Harris, or maybe he's overpriced right away, and then he has 2 bad games and his price comes down. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be an interesting one to watch because if his price comes out high right away, probably don't play him right away. Say he sucks for 2 games and his price goes down to like $4,000 or something. He's cheap. That's when you play him, even though a lot of people might play him at that point, but some people might sour on him and be like, oh, he's only had, 7 catches in 2 games or something like that, for example.
The beginning of the year is, a good time to win some money because they don't know how to price a lot of these rookies and, a lot of these players that they're not sure and we're not sure, but it's a good time to gamble on it. I love the beginning of the year. It's my favorite.
And rookies, players going to new teams as well. Mm-hmm. Like last year, I think Stephon Diggs was probably pretty cheap to start the year too because nobody knew he was going to get like 150 targets.
I believe he was like in the 7s. He was pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm. And then don't be afraid of those guys whose price just doesn't change week to week as well. And then sometimes you can go down towards the bottom of the barrel. Shout out Detroit Beastie over there, bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, Chris is amazing.
Go down to some of those running backs. We'll call them high variance running backs. So maybe the pass catcher that might get the touchdown one week. A good example last year was Rex Burkhead. against the Raiders. He had that 3-touchdown game. Low ownership. I think he was like $4,400, which is $400 above the minimum. Sometimes you can take shots on guys like that. Doesn't always pay off, but if you're just looking for a fill-in guy that fits your price budget, and he's not going to hit all the time, but if he hits 20% of the time, that's what puts your lineup over the edge at the end of the day.
The Patriots backfield scares me so much. I generally don't play them, but I mean, you're right though.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to play your favorite guys too if they're at the right price too.
Yeah. Don't be contrarian just to be contrarian, It's fun. It's supposed to be fun at the end of the day. So, get your guy.
Let's see. Do you play a lot of single game DFS at all for NFL?
Single entry?
No, like single game, like just Patriots versus Broncos, for example.
Oh,
with like captain and stuff like that.
I have. I don't play a lot of those though. Even in NBA this year, we had talked and I had tried it a few times, but I'm not very successful at that. So
I don't like it in NBA, but in football, it's interesting. And I think there's a lot of strategy that can go into that too. We could have a whole show just about that. Because what I'll try to do is I'll try to find the guy that's under $1,000 that's going to be on the field and have a chance to do something. I'll start with that guy in my lineup, and then I'll figure out who the heck I want to be my captain. Sometimes it's the quarterback. Sometimes it's whoever you think is going to have the most amount of points. Or it could be like the Super Bowl where I put Rob Gronkowski there because he's only $3,300. Then, that price and a half bump on him is like nothing. Then you can still fit a whole bunch of other players there too. So there's a lot of different strategies you can play with that. Who goes in the captain spot, stuff like that as well. Like a lot of times you can play 2 quarterbacks, but sometimes you have to give up something to play 2 quarterbacks too. So there's just a lot of different strategy that can go into that. We can make a whole video about that, but that's where I made a lot of my money last year, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it can be fun. I just tried it a few times last year and kind of gave up on it. But, this year I got you on a team, so you can help me get somewhere with it.
And like I said, that's where a lot of them free contests are too. The KFC one was for Monday Night Football. That was a pretty big one.
That's how I got into it, was those free ones. And then I was like, oh, it's cool.
Yeah, that Baltimore versus Cleveland game. I was in like top 15 in that one. And then like Kareem Hunt scores 2 touchdowns in like the last 2 minutes, and then I get knocked down to like 200. I was like,
I love that game because I had Hunt. I do remember that. I was ecstatic.
Because he scored 2 touchdowns, and then whatever Baltimore running back I didn't have scored 1 touchdown too. So it was like 3 touchdowns that just killed me. I was like,
yeah,
go from making $100 to like $2 in like a minute and a half. And then the Pittsburgh and the Cleveland game in the playoffs, I had the optimal lineup on FanDuel until the last 40 seconds of the game.
That's something to think about too. I mean, if you're coming into, like Monday Night Football, if you're playing the big slate or whatever, and say you're up by a bunch of points, well, you could switch out, play somebody a little bit safer. Or if you're down by a lot, you can throw in the wide receiver 3 and hope he scores some touchdowns. So,
yep,
just
definitely.
a little tip.
And I'll say too, if you start playing those single games, there's a lot of people that will play. They'll be like, I have to play Thursday night, I have to play Sunday night, and I have to play Monday night. My friend is like that. Play if you're not if you're not comfortable playing, say you don't feel comfortable with the matchups, you don't feel comfortable with the pricings on one of those games, just don't play it. It's better than losing whatever money you're putting down on that game. I play 80% of them, but there's still that 20%. I'm like, it's not worth playing this because there's too much risk to it. You don't know, like it's predicting who's going to score the touchdown. And sometimes you have a good idea of that, but other times you don't. And you're just like, don't play it. That's all you got to do.
That's solid.
At the end of the day, this is gambling, and you still have to control our addiction to gambling for DFS. It's great to make money. We're going to make some money this year. Follow my videos. Follow you guys over at Sons of Dynasty DFS, SODFS, or however you spell it.
Yep, it is SODFS. It will be mainly go through the Sons of Dynasty Twitter page though. So,
yep,
which is Dynasty Sons. So
yeah, definitely Definitely check that out. Definitely follow you on Twitter as well at Nate_FFL. You want to give the people a little rundown on where all you are working for, because it's way too many places to remember for me.
Yeah, I gotta try to remember myself. Obviously, I'm at True North. I love it there. That is my family and my home base. At Sons of Dynasty and now SODFS as well, which is part of the True North brand. We're plugged in together. So I'm also at DLF. I do some Dynasty writing there, a couple articles a month generally. Ball Blast, I'll be chipping in with Bo. Bo's going to be running the show, but I'll be helping out with some DFS stuff here and there. And that's about it, really. I'm focused on this launching this podcast. It's definitely a lot of work, and appreciate everybody that's helped with that. Can't wait to get it off the ground, and then can't wait to get you on there.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys need any help over there, definitely give me a shout out too. I know Dan's working on crazy stuff all the time too.
Yeah, Dan is killing it right now. I appreciate him a lot, because without him, we wouldn't be to the point where we're about ready to go. So shout out Dan.
You and I both do a lot in a day, and I think he probably does even more than us with
he does, man.
his 2 kids.
He does. Yep. It's impressive, and I appreciate the hell out of him.
Yep, definitely. Is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Let's go win some money this year.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, it was a pleasure having you on, Nate. Really connecting. Obviously, we talk pretty much every day as it is anyways. But,
yeah. Just on the mics now.
Yeah, but definitely, once again, check out Nate on Twitter. Check out Sons of Dynasty on Twitter. Check out their podcast on the True North Fantasy Football YouTube page. If you're not subscribed over there, go over there and subscribe as well. There is a plethora of podcasts coming into the season. Jet Sweep Show, Gold Jacket Podcast, True North Podcast, the Sons of Dynasty Podcast, the Point After Podcast, and then obviously the Smoke Show Podcast popping up in there with some awesome guests. Smokey's been killing it over there. And I don't have a podcast per se myself. I obviously got this channel. I help out, as a guest, as a fill-in co-host all the time as well too. But definitely check those guys out there. Check out the True North Fantasy Football website as well, on Twitter, on Instagram too. Apparently that's a thing now. I have no idea how to Instagram at all, but if you're into that, definitely check that out as well. Check out Viridian Global. Will is the master of clothing. I do not have any on right now, but Nate is rocking that Sons of Dynasty hat. I have one myself, probably the cleanest flat bill snapback I've ever seen in my life. Kind of replaced my old White Sox one, but that's a whole nother story. I'll be having that on this weekend for the Fantasy Football Expo, but that's going to be a blast. But next year you'll be there. Dan's going to be there. There's going to be a whole party next year.
I will be there next year. Unfortunately, work is limited to my availability this year, but that's all right. You can fill me in on everything that happens.
Yeah. But last but not least, if you guys are new to the channel and you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. It really helps build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And that's one for you, the viewers, helping you guys with your fantasy football, helping you guys with your DFS, whether it's NFL or NBA. Then talking some NFL draft prospects for the 2022 class once we get rolling here a little bit. Some NFL news as it pops up as well. But with that being said, that's pretty much all we had for this episode. Once again, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day.